What an ending to the final Premier League game of the day. Adley in stoppage time, giving Bournemouth a 3-2 win over the defending champions. Mark, Janusz and Sam here to discuss. And Janusz, just like Liverpool did to Bournemouth earlier in the season when they scored twice to win it late, Bournemouth have done so to Liverpool. What are the repercussions of this result for both sides?
How many managers have we fired today, Mark? First,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, look, as you know, I had a bad feeling about this game because simply Liverpool are not a good team, right? If I had to name one good quality about Liverpool this season, I think I struggle. I mean, I can't think of one thing that Liverpool are doing well, right? So you have to put that down to the coach. That's just the way it goes. It's been okay because the win against Marseille, but if you look at the form, if you look at the Premier League, that's what 4 draws and a loss right now. So to be honest with you, I wouldn't be shocked if Liverpool, this week didn't have a new manager.
We'll talk about that and who it might be if that was to happen. There's plenty to talk about. Somehow we managed to get 17 minutes earlier from games that maybe we struggled to get 5 minutes from, but there's so much to talk about here. Sam, Liverpool went with a 4-2-2-2. Quite literally, there was no spine to the team today. Are they soft?
They have been wide open way too much this season in defensive transition, spaces in the midfield. And Slot has moved and changed the formation quite a lot to try and remedy this. But it doesn't seem to matter what he tries. Nothing seems to stick. This was the same shape, the 4-2-2-2, that they used against Marseille in midweek. And it worked really, really well. They were really quite disciplined against Marseille and they didn't fall for the studs on the ball, Roberto De Zerbi bait the press. Then they picked them off and scored a goal and they gained control. They come back to what is on paper an easier game, but in Premier League terms, there's nothing really easy anymore. And they really, really struggle. And as this game starts to open up, again, you're looking at the spaces in midfield. You're just like, why aren't you plugging those gaps? Why are these players being overrun? Why is the team backpedaling constantly? And how have you been tricked into playing a full-length box-to-box game against Bournemouth, the transition terriers? It's incredible. But honestly, it's nothing new. It's been present from the very start of the season. And you referenced the reverse fixture on the opening weekend of the season, Bournemouth, when they went to Anfield. And quite frankly, for me, they were the better team. And they got stung at the last by Salah and co with a couple of late goals. Right from that game, Liverpool were struggling in midfield. And it really hasn't changed, despite the fact that Slot has used now, by my count, at least 3 distinctly different shapes, if not possibly 4.
Janusz, this is a Bournemouth side that were without Kluivert, Tavernier, Brooks, and of course Semenyo, who was their top scorer and went to Manchester City. Yet they went 2-0 up just after half an hour gone in the game, and they led by 2-0. How did they do that?
Yeah, this is also a Liverpool side that's been without just about everybody in this Premier League season. And we have to say that, right? I mean, you look at the leader, Van Dijk, guilty on 2 goals. Okay, scores on a header. That's something that he does very well. It's a set piece. But, how did they do it? They did exactly what Liverpool was good at in the past, right? Because if I'm looking for identity from Liverpool, let's name it: no press, no counter press, predictable in possession, very, very bad in terms of playing against teams in a low block, which wasn't the case today. And reverse that. That's exactly what Andoni Iraola does, right? I mean, they attack with the front 3, 4, 5. They press, they hurry you, they play open. Let's just think about that. I mean, this is a Bournemouth side who, for the most part, I think fights for survival every season, right? Yet they're open, they're attacking, they're brave. And it feels to me like that's usually what I say about Liverpool, but not this season.
There was a little bit of redemption, Sam, for Virgil van Dijk. He pulled one back just before half-time, but he kind of got bullied. He kind of got out-muscled, and that was part of the kind of question to you about them being soft. But when he got that goal back and Liverpool went in, 2-1 down instead of 2-0 at half-time. Were you thinking comeback was on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always skeptical about whether or not Bournemouth are going to be able to protect a lead properly, because this is a light criticism, because this is a team that is working on a fraction of the budget of many other Premier League clubs. Not that they haven't spent, it's just that they're obviously not an entrenched top 6, top 7 team with 18 stellar players. But they're really good at playing at that high energy game and stealing into the leads. They've been less good over the years at slowing things down, controlling the pace of the game, and taking it away from their opponents. So whether or not Bournemouth are 2-0 or up or 2-0 down, the game is still right on, right, for anyone in there. So I was pretty concerned for them, given the fact that they conceded at that juncture. And then when the second goal goes in, the equaliser, immediately there's a chance for Florian Wirtz, who flushes one across goal, and Georgi Petrovic does a good job to get a hand to it. You talk about Van Dijk redeeming himself a little bit. Petrovic, I think, has had a terrible season. And I don't think he covers himself in glory for the Szoboszlai free kick. So he does at least get something back in there. At that point, you are expecting Liverpool to go on and secure the win. But again, this underlining fragility starts to rear its head. And Liverpool look more nervous at 2-2 than they do at 2-0 down. I don't understand it. And Evan Nilsson misses that a huge chance in the 84th minute before Bournemouth eventually go and get their win. So I couldn't call this one. I never thought it was Bournemouth's. I never thought it was Liverpool's. I'm actually shocked that either of them had the nerve to win it, to be honest.
Yeah, with regards to that Evan Nilsson chance in the 84th minute, the flag did go up. It was a glaring opportunity. The flag did go up, so it wouldn't have counted, obviously, depending on another check by VAR. But as Sam mentioned, Janusz, Szoboszlai, it's really well worked free kick, a little flick back by Mo Salah, another assist for him since coming back from AFCON. Goalkeeper doesn't do great there, but it's 2-2. Here's the point I want to make here. They've come back from 2-0 down. Now, a couple of seasons ago, from losing positions, Liverpool earned 29 points. After losing, or when they were losing in games, they won 7 and they drew 7. Last season, 23 points. When losing in a game, they went on to win 5 of them and draw 8 of them. This season, 2 points, 2 draws. That's all. Now, given the way they started the season with the late winners, the late goals and everything like that, they weren't losing in the games, but they kept going till the end. What's happened mentally or physically to Liverpool that they're not getting these points late on that they have been getting?
I think from experience, that's what happens when you know the season is gone. That's really, I mean, we can sit here and talk about this for hours, right? But for a team like Liverpool, a Premier League season ends the moment you feel you don't have a chance to win it. And this is not just today, obviously, because we knew for a while now that Liverpool aren't going to be able to defend their title. But I just think that it's as simple as that, right? I mean, you look at Champions League, that's still a legitimate goal. I think that's why you saw a totally different Liverpool side against Olympique Marseille. And I think you're going to see that for as long as Liverpool stay in it. But that's what happens. Big clubs realize, I think, at some stage that, okay, one goal, the biggest goal was, of course, defending Premier League title. And once that went away, that extra step or the will to win it goes away, because I can't say it otherwise, unless, of course, you think that Arne Slot has lost the dressing room, which of course we'll never know. But obviously something's not right. I think we've been hearing about this, not just Mo Salah, but McAllister and everybody else. And you watch that team, and as I mentioned, I want to repeat it. There is not one redeeming quality about Liverpool. I can't think of one thing that Liverpool do well.
Let's park the bus here a second. Look at it from the other way, Sam. Because, that was nearly their 5th consecutive draw in the Premier League for the first time since 1980. However, Liverpool were on a 13-game unbeaten run. Hadn't lost since November 22nd, albeit hadn't won in the Premier League since the end of December. So, what are we doing here? Is it glass half empty, glass half full? Janusz said we might be looking for another Liverpool manager soon. Let's make some sense of this. How much pressure is Arne Slot under now?
Nah, loads of pressure. I can't glass half full this. No way. Like, it's all well and good saying you're unbeaten, but you've drawn to, just looking at the fixtures, drawn to Leeds, drawn to Fulham, drawn with Burnley, lost to Bournemouth, and, you know, dig a little bit deeper, just a tiny bit deeper. 97th minute Harrison Reed goal against Fulham. They take the lead against Burnley at home and they don't win. Go a bit further back, even for the last win before that, which was the Wolves game at home. They were like really bad against Wolves at home. I've got a few friends that are season ticket holders at Liverpool and came out of that stadium and they were like, how did we make Wolves look that good? This is the reigning Premier League champions who spent 400 million or so over the summer. Like, it's quite the predicament that they've got themselves into. And Janusz, you can't point to a single thing that they're doing well. I would argue that Dominik Szoboszlai he falls into this. I don't know. I can't tell you exactly what he's doing because it's not just one thing. It's just that he, as a presence, is the thing that seems to be holding Liverpool together this season. But what a mess. And I just want to draw your attention to the state of the back line that they finished up with here. This is quite ridiculous for the defending champions. Szoboszlai has been pushed to right back because of fatigue and injury management and whatever. Endo is playing centre back next to Van Dijk. And at left back, there's a guy who could conceivably leave the club next week. What? Like, how have they ended up in this position in the middle of the season? It is ridiculous for a club, for the defending champions to have a back line resembling that. And no wonder they don't look confident. No wonder they don't look like they can go on and win the game. And no wonder when Bournemouth apply a bit of pressure, they fall to pieces.
Could have paid the money and got Mark Gahey. I mean, it was there for them. Now he's gone to Manchester City. And Joe Gomez was still off the field, Janusz, when Bournemouth got their second. It seemed like it took an eternity to try and patch him up. Ultimately, he went off. And as Sam was saying, they had to kind of rejig things. Frimpong didn't last an hour. Szoboszlai went back to right back. Kerkez, again, you've been very critical of him this season. He got replaced by Andy Robertson. How have the defending champions, who we thought had spent so well on Weerts and on Isak, allowed their defence to be as bad as it is and be so negligent when it comes to replacing what they had or didn't have at the back?
Yeah, you can't beat around the bush here. I'm glad Sam has mentioned that because I think that was absolutely spot on. But, that's what happened. When you have big time players and you kind of towards the end of the season last year, you decide, should you spend the money or not, right? I'm talking about Van Dijk. I'm talking about Salah and Konate to a degree. Of course, he's not here. And you take a risk, right? Because, part of you thinks, well, these guys have done so much for us. They're still good players. They're still great leaders. We're talking about Van Dijk, the captain as well. And I suspect that, maybe it's a season off, right? Maybe next season he's going to be great, but I doubt it a little bit. The truth of the matter is that Liverpool has spent a lot of money. Time will tell if these players will come good, but the bottom line is that nobody that they've signed for the most part is playing well, right? Tighe is the only one, and today, to be quite honest, I don't want to be picky because I don't know what would have happened, but how does he not start? He's been, other than Szoboszlai, as Sam has mentioned, been probably the second best player, right? I mean, how do you not start him? I know there's a little bit of an injury a couple of games ago and all that, and they're going to say, well, we're being careful, whatever it is. But to me, he has to start today, right? And does that changes the result? I don't know. But I'm starting to wonder, and you know that. I've been wondering about Arne Slot for a while now.
5 wins out of 7 in the Champions League. Karabag at home in midweek, Sam. They win that and they're in the top 8 and they don't have to go through the knockout playoffs. So they're guaranteed a spot in the latter stages of the Champions League. I'm looking at this from a positive perspective. I get what you're both saying. Take it on board as well. I'm just trying to think the way that the board would think. The title's gone. But remember last season with Ange Postecoglou, he said, right, I'm going to go for the Europa League. That's my target now. Do you think, Sam, that Arne Slot will get the opportunity if they beat Karabag and get through to the latter stages without having a playoff? Is it a difficult decision to get rid of Arne Slot when they're going pretty well in the Champions League?
I do think that it is still quite a difficult decision, even when you've got the evidence in front of you. But what I'll say to caveat that immediately is, I don't know if this counts as a hot take or what, but sorry, but for the most part, Champions League is easier for English clubs than a Premier League game. It just is, and I've had this feeling since last season. I was watching, Aston Villa and Liverpool like work really, really, really hard on a week-to-week basis to overcome just about anybody in the Premier League, because there's almost no easy games. And then you'd get to the midweek and it would look a bit more like a Europa match, a Europa League mismatch. I really got that feeling last year. I was watching Villa play against like Bologna, and Bologna just gave up because they were nowhere near it. And Juventus weren't any good either at Villa Park. And then they'd go and play against Brighton and they'd have to pull out all the stops. And I get that impression right now from Arsenal. I get it in the Champions League versus the Premier League. They've won 7 of 7, obviously. It's slowed down in the league. I get the impression from Liverpool. And also Tottenham. Tottenham are going to finish in the top 8 in the Champions League. And they have been borderline useless for 3 months in the Premier League. So I don't know how much the Champions League success should count right here when you're assessing Arne Slot's season and whether or not it could be that saving grace. Because while it's great to get in that top 8, I'm not convinced it's been that difficult for these Premier League teams to get into that position. And the presence of so many of them in that top 8 does support my point there. So I'd fear that if he did try to point to that, someone might turn around and say, sorry, that's just basics. That's just what we expect.
That fair, Janusz?
Yes, nothing short by winning the Champions League. It is important. I mean, it'd be hard to get rid of the manager that wins the Premier League and Champions League in consecutive seasons, right? So let's start with that. So, we don't go crazy here. But yeah, nothing short of that is going to save Arne Slot. I think, if you're going forward, you gotta look at this season, and you gotta look. The drop off is so bad. It really is when you talk about the intensity and what Liverpool was known for. And I don't know if it was maybe, ahead of time for Arne Slot last season winning the Premier League, because I don't think anybody thought that he was going to be able to do it in his first season. But sometimes you pay the price for that. And based on what I see, again, this is this is worse than a bad season. I'm looking at a team that's void of motivation, void of quality, and again, whoever comes in is going to have to make some tough decisions, right? Because some of the issues won't go away, and I'm talking about Salah, the leadership of Van Dijk, and at what point do you kind of cut loose and truly rebuild, because it seems to me that that's the first thing. Whoever's going to be there, if it's Arne Slot, he's going to get a pass for next season. This is a big rebuild for Liverpool, in my opinion.
Just want to stick with you, Janusz. Something that happened during the week. It's a bit of a naughty question from a journalist prior to Marseille against Liverpool to Arne Slot, basically saying, what do you think about Xabi Alonso maybe taking your job? Virgil van Dijk came out and said it was totally disrespectful. You started this saying, are we going to be looking for another manager, or are we sacking another manager today after Thomas Frank was maybe rescued with a late 2-2 draw at Burnley? So Xabi Alonso, is he a better option? If it was X against Y, Alonso against Arne Slot, who's the best manager, and would he be a better option for Liverpool right now?
Well, it's an easy one, right? You look at Xabi Alonso, Liverpool legend, I guess. He's a legend for so many clubs, right? If you look at Frimpong, if you look at Wirtz, obviously, those two players alone would know exactly what he wants to accomplish. And as I said, we've seen at Liverpool, you're dealing with egos. I think at Real Madrid, I'm sorry. At Liverpool, it's a little bit different, I think. But again, you have to, those tough questions that I just mentioned, because whoever comes in, and oh, by the way, not because it's easy, but I think Antonio Iraola would have been really good at what Liverpool, the way Liverpool wants to play. If I look at Klopp, if I look at Arne Slot from last season, the pressing game and bravery, Iraola is the sort of manager that I even put ahead of Xabi Alonso. But again, if that's going to happen, if it's Xabi Alonso, if it's Antonio Iraola, then you have to say to yourself, okay, how am I going to accomplish the way I want to play? Is Mo Salah going to be the one? How long are you going to hide him in terms of pressing and defensive work and all of that? So there are bigger questions than just who's going to be the manager, because I think Liverpool wants to play the way I just explained. And if they're going to do it, then it's a massive rebuild.
And on that, Sam, I asked Janusz earlier, That sounded very Sean Connery there. Apologies for that. I asked him earlier about Spurs. Is it on the players, is it on the manager, or is it on the club? Janusz has kind of spoken about Liverpool there. What do you think here? Is a change of manager going to fix all the issues, or is it a case of, look, Arne Slot's got enough credit in the bank, he deserves at least the opportunity to try and win the Champions League for Liverpool this season?
Well, there is usually no quick fix when you are mid-season. So especially when, obviously, you know, whoever's fault it is, I don't know. But the situation with the back line today, that makes it difficult for anybody in charge, right? So that damage is done. It doesn't matter who stands in the dugout. If Konate is injured and Joe Gomez is injured and you end up with Endo at centre-back, you are not going to be the Liverpool that you want to be. It doesn't matter who stands in the dugout. That's just a fact. So I don't know if Xabi Alonso could dig them out of this quickly, if he would be a good mid-season appointment. I do think that there's a very strong case for trying something, because it's been months now. And it was also, Liverpool were also quite underwhelming when they didn't have an injury crisis, when they had a luxury of options, actually, and they were trying to figure out how to play Isak and Tighe together, and what would that mean for Salah? And Cody Gakpo's in really good form, so you don't want to mess with him too much. It still wasn't like that convincing. So I don't think Arne Slot has much credit in the bank this season at all. And as I've already said, I'm sort of half discrediting some of the Champions League work there. I'm looking mostly at the Premier League. So I wouldn't blame them for trying something. I think they'd be very foolish to assume that it would fix everything immediately.
Finally, Janusz, to you, I think I'm right in saying, because managers have left, I think I'm right in saying that Brendan Rodgers in October 2015 was the last manager that Liverpool sacked. They've had a lot of managers since then, but I don't think they've sacked any of them. It doesn't seem to be the Liverpool way. Is Arne Slot the Liverpool manager for the rest of the season, Janusz?
Yeah, I was just going to say that when I made those statements, I don't think they're going to let him go right now, but I'd be thinking right now about next season already. And I think he's going to probably last till the end of the season, but I'd be very, very surprised if Arne Slot was the manager of Liverpool starting next Premier League season. I wouldn't do it. I think, you know, Sam is quite right. I mean, you know, there's something that's wrong with the entire system defensively. But Mark, you've mentioned before, I mean, look at the losses that Bournemouth had today, right? Because it's easy for us to look at the injuries, but for a club like Bournemouth to be without 2 or 3 key players, it's much, much bigger. But I'm talking about the bravery. I'm talking about not being pragmatic. You know, I watched Andoni Iraola for a while right now, and he never changes. So I think, like Sam, I think that's what he's saying. I don't think they're going to make a decision right now, but next season I think we're going to see a new manager at Liverpool.